Tragedies, they demand transparency, not a troupe. I'm Michael Smerconish in Philadelphia. I've often wanted to make a point about post-catastrophe pressers, only to then change my mind due to concerns about decorum. But not today. I'm talking about what often follows a school shooting, an air disaster, or instance of terrorism. Too often they become opportunities for grandstanding politicians when all the public wants is the latest information and to know whether we're safe. Twice this week, we needed that knowledge. First, after a 42-year-old suspect drove through a crowded street in the iconic French Quarter of New Orleans on New Year's Day, killing 14 and injuring dozens. And again, hours later, after a Tesla Cybertruck exploded outside the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. The briefings that followed became a study in contrasts. New Orleans was notable for politicians' sharp elbows. Las Vegas for a sober, straightforward delivery of the latest information. New Year's Day in New Orleans, there were two briefings, actually. In the first, the mayor of New Orleans, LaToya Cantrell, referred to the event as terrorism.
First of all, we do know that the city of New Orleans was impacted by a terrorist attack.
Then the New Orleans superintendent of police said the FBI would be taking over the investigation, whereupon we heard from the agent in charge, only she didn't call it terrorism.
My name's Alethea Duncan. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge for FBI New Orleans. As Chief Kirkpatrick said, we'll be taking over the investigative lead for this event. This is not a terrorist event.
I don't know why she said that. I don't know why Agent Duncan said it was not a terrorist event. Perhaps more accurate would have been to say, at this stage, we don't know. Perhaps her word choice explains, doesn't justify, but explains what occurred at the second briefing that day. Wednesday afternoon, a gaggle of politicians and law enforcement representatives assembled. You had a number of sheriffs, the police chief, state attorney general, plus the governor, a U.S. senator, a member of Congress, and a representative of the Sugar Bowl, which, by the way, was prudently postponed for a day. Sadly, because of the amount of tragedy and gun violence in our society, we've become accustomed to seeing these types of events in which politicians gather around a podium, some sporting outerwear that displays their names and or the insignia of their office, even if we already know who they are. This time, there were 9 different speakers at this press conference. The FBI special agent in charge said the truck attack was an act of terror, and there was gratitude expressed, appropriately so, for the cops who valiantly took down the terrorist. But there was also lots of praise for one another and their respective agencies. Essentially, these folks were congratulating one another for doing what they've been hired and elected to do. Things took a worse turn when Louisiana Senator John Kennedy was invited to speak. His contempt for federal investigators, I thought, was palpable, and I believe invited conspiracy thinking.
Did talk to the Secretary of Homeland Security a little while ago. And I told him that with all the respect I could muster, I need to tell the American people the truth, and the people of New Orleans the truth, and the people of America the truth. I will promise you this. I will, when it is appropriate and this investigation is complete, you will find out what happened and who was responsible, or I will raise fresh hell. And I will chase those in the federal government who are responsible for telling us what happened, like they stole Christmas.
Look, his shtick has always been soundbite driven, a rather weak imitation of Dan Ratherisms. You remember the election night when Dan Rather told us the race was hotter than a Times Square Rolex? Well, 15 minutes later, Kennedy reinserted himself into the mix, this time elbowing out the FBI agent so that he could make a partisan quip about the media and repeat his distrust of the federal government.
Can I say something, Riker? Tell me who you're with.
WDSU.
WDSU. Okay, and CBS.
The NBC's over here on the right.
Oh, that's an unusual position.
Sad that drew laughter the day of this tragedy, and you saw the senator muscle his way back into the podium where he then said this.
Once the FBI has a chance to investigate all this, along working with state police, working with Homeland Security, working with the city of New Orleans, they're going to tell you what happened. I can promise you that, or I'm going to raise fresh hell. But right now, they're in the process of trying to catch the other bad guys. And I want to give them the benefit of the doubt for a while.
Maybe he was thinking of the FBI agent's word choice earlier in the day, her refusal to use the word terrorism. But I doubt that anybody was worrying that the feds wouldn't be forthcoming until Kennedy raised that specter. Again, all praise to the cops who took fire and took down the bad guy in New Orleans. But as for the aftermath, it was too many people with not enough to say to justify their presence. Now compare Las Vegas. Because there, on New Year's Day, a Tesla Cybertruck exploded outside the Trump International Hotel. The 37-year-old male suspect died by suicide and was an active member in the military. So far, investigators have found no direct connection between the Vegas blast and the terrorist attack in New Orleans. They apparently both used the same app to rent their vehicles, and each served in the Army, including stints at Fort Bragg. On Thursday, I watched Metropolitan Police Sheriff Kevin McMahill lead a Las Vegas briefing. And what a difference in comparison to New Orleans. The sole speakers were Sheriff McMahill, the FBI special agent in charge of Las Vegas, and the assistant special agent in charge of the ATF. In other words, no politicians, no personalized garb, no sharp elbows, no self-congratulations, no partisan jokes about the media, just cops and prosecutors dispassionately telling the public what it needed to know based on the best available information.
Every tip and lead that comes in, every piece of evidence that comes in, we don't discount it, we work it through. It's an interesting thing during these kinds of investigations that if these turn out to be simply similarities, very strange similarities to have. And so we're not prepared to rule in or rule out anything at this point.
The only thing for sure is that there will be more tragedy and more press conferences. So let's hope these two responses will be studied, one for what not to do, the other to be emulated. The goal is not to score political points nor plant the seeds of conspiracy nor posture for the cameras. We don't need performative outrage. We need leaders with information who can rise above the noise and offer facts and reassurance. And anything less will only deepen mistrust in our institutions when faith in them is already precariously low.